Pledge allegiance to
the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
in a moment of silence. Of course, anyone under the age of 3 is excluded. Thank you. Start off with citizen concerns. Item 1, anything that is to be heard that is not already on the agenda.
I have a question. I am the dark of the meeting. Could I come up and just make 2 quick comments?
Yeah.
My name's Nick Lars from Bronson, Iowa. I just wanted to make 2 quick comments regarding the setback decision you guys are going to speak on later tonight. I've got a meeting in Climbing Hill to get to at 6:30. So, in 2020, most all properties received a letter in Woodbury County stating they'd receive an assessed value increase that averaged to be about 16%. And now, 2 years later, you're considering an ordinance that would allow setbacks for large wind turbines to be 1,250 feet or 2,500 feet for many of the same properties. It's clear to me that the setbacks of 2,500 feet would better protect the actual value of their properties in rural Woodbury County better than a 1,250 foot setback. After the recent increase in our assessed values, I ask you to make a decision that would best protect the actual future sale price of our properties in rural Woodbury County. Also, just on another note, I think as voting members on this item, it'd be important for you guys to publicly disclose if you or your family have locations with potential wind turbine sites, because your quantity of sold wind turbines could be affected by your voting decision. In other words, if you or your family stand to receive any future financial gains based on this decision. So those are just a couple items that I wanted to bring up and make sure you guys were considering when you make the decision. All right.
Thanks, Nick. And just to clarify something, the ordinance for the wind setbacks was passed in July of 2021. So we're not considering it here today. It's just we're looking at the setbacks again as a revisit to clarify. Anyone else to be heard that is not on the agenda? Is it something that's on the agenda?
No.
Okay, go ahead.
And my name's Daniel Hare, 2889 Humboldt Avenue, Hvac, Iowa, 51026. I'm also here to comment on the whole wind turbine setback issue. Those of you probably know I'm on the Board of Adjustment, so I kind of heard rumblings about this way back from our former rural economic advisor. And I just want to kind of reiterate the fact of what I know and what I think about this. The whole wind ordinance process was, in my opinion, a setup from the beginning. Like I said, I'm on the Board of Adjustment, and I remember our former economic advisor bringing up a wind ordinance. I remember kind of smelling a rat right away. I voiced my opinion to him, and he assured me that we had to get a wind ordinance on the books or this county would be a sitting duck for a wind farm. He stated that we would have some of the toughest turbine zoning rules in the state. And we kind of know now that's completely false. There's other counties in the state that actually have a tougher setback ordinances than we do. The wind turbine setbacks in our tough ordinance, tough in quotes, started out at 1.1 times the height of the turbine from a residence. That's about as close as a setback as I've ever heard. That's where this ordinance started. Then next, the setbacks were proposed to be moved to 600 feet from the nearest residence. You know, that's just kind of, that's not any better than 1.1 times the height of a tower. Again, way too close. Finally, 1,250 feet was agreed upon the setback. I'm speculating on this, but you guys know why. As far as from what I found, 1,250 feet is the magic number that our rural economic advisor took right off the Iowa Environmental Agency's website. He knew this ordinance was destined for trouble, so he started off with the closest possible setbacks and gradually increased them each time to make it seem as if we were really being tough. This whole process smells like a scam. I understand our rural economic advisor is no longer with us. Seemed like he kind of left that position shortly after this whole ordinance went through. So to me and people I've been talking to, it's very suspicious. Next thing we know, here comes the wind turbine contractors into the county. Some of you worry about already existing contracts. Well, let me tell you what I know about contracts. This county put tons of money into the CF expansion project. They were going to lower our fertilizer prices, and our co-op's buying hydrous ammonia and urea from them, which is our biggest source of nitrogen. Several years ago, we prepaid thousands of dollars worth of anhydrous. Harvest went late that year. The ground froze, making it impossible to put our anhydrous on. CF tore up our contracts and forced us to rebuy our anhydrous the following spring at a higher price. That's just my experience with contracts. If you're all worried about, where did I put this here? Okay, no one yet that I have talked to in the county knows anything like this was headed for Woodbury County. If these wind towers propose to go up in the county, then you can immediately send the assessor to drastically lower our property values and thus our taxes, because these turbines in this county will definitely devastate our property values.
Mr. Chairperson, this is on the agenda, we have said here that are going to come up.
So do you get what he's saying?
This
This is already on the agenda. Citizen concerns are supposed to be for items not already on the
Okay,
agenda.
well, I was told that this was not going to be on the agenda tonight.
Item 18,
Well, the gentleman before me spoke on it, so I guess while I'm going, can I continue?
because
or do
he
you
said
wanna-
he was going to be leaving,
Sure,
right?
yep.
Okay, so we have set times that are on the agenda that we need to be.
Sure, so this is on the agenda because I was.
Item 18, it says approve to move forward to amend wind turbine ordinance, changing setbacks to 2,500 feet.
Okay, do you guys want me to postpone this until then, or do you
Yeah,
want me to?
if you want to pick up where you left off at the,
There's a set time at 4:35.
so,
At 4:35,
It's 4:34 and 40 seconds right now.
sure, so
so,
interrupt this and I continue on.
Well, we try to keep with the set times for the property sales and that kind of stuff. We try and maintain
Sure,
the time on that, so.
all right, so. We'll
so I'll
come
be
back
back
to you.
up here then.
Thank you.
Okay,
All right, so item 2, I'll move approval of the agenda.
Second.
Motion by Raddick, second by DeWitt. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Passes 5-0. So we're going to move on to the 4:35 set time, which is item 9. From Board Administration, public hearing and sale of property parcel known as 1020 South Glass Street. Anyone to be heard for or against the sale of the property? All right, seeing no comment, I'll move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion by Raddick, second by DeWitt. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes 5-0. We'll now take any bids from anybody that would like to purchase 1020 South Glass Street. State your name, address, and your bid amount, please. Come right on up to the microphone and.
Jared Bumstead, 1024 South Glass. Minimum bid, I believe, is $575. 79.
All right, so we got one bid. Anybody else want this property? Anyone else? No, no one else wants to bid on this?
Hearing none, I move we sell the property to Mr. Bumstead for $579.
I'll second. Motion by DeWitt, second by Raddick. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Passes 5-0. So
Thank you.
get with Karen here. All right, we're going to move back to the consent agenda. Items 3 through 8 constitute a consent agenda or routine action items to be considered by one motion. Items pass unanimously unless a separate vote is requested by a board member. Item 3 is approval of the minutes of the July 19th, 2022 meeting. Item 4 is approval of claims. Item 5 from Board Administration, approval of notice property sale known as 508 Fifth Avenue, Hvac, Iowa, for Tuesday, August 9th at 4:35 p.m. Item 6A is receive Auditor's quarterly report. B, approval liquor license application, Woodbury County Fair, Mobile. Item 7A is approval of memorandum of personnel transactions. 7B is authorization to initiate hiring process. And item 8 from Secondary roads, approve the permit to work in the right-of-way for SCS Carbon Transport and to direct the chair to sign the permit. All right, that ends the consent agenda. Any discussion? Anything else?
I'll move the consent agenda.
I'll second. Motion by DeWitt, second by Radig. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes 5-0. All right, that brings us to just about our 4:40. Yep, 4:40 on my clock here. Set time for secondary roads. 10A is approve the permanent closure and vacation of the county roads in the Morningside Second Edition approved vacation resolution.
Martin Harrow, Woodbury County Engineer. I swear this is the last time I will come in on Morningside Second Edition. These are the final two roads. When we vacated a number of roads last year about this time, we had left Wells Avenue. We had thought that one would be the access to get back to the remaining private properties in the area. It is an inaccessible road, so instead we kept the road immediately to the east open to satisfy that access need. And now we come back to close Wells. And then there is a small portion of Wells that lies in the third edition that we would also like to vacate. I guess we open the public hearing for any comment. I did receive a phone call from Eric Henning. He was in support of the closure. He owns adjacent property. His comment was that he would like to see the board provide quitclaim deed for half of the roadway property owners on both sides of the road, as we did last time. I don't know if there's anybody else with comment on that one.
Anybody to be heard? Seeing none, I'll move the close the public. Move to close the public hearing.
Comment on that one.
Oh, do you? Okay.
CJ Hope, I'm the adjacent from Eric Henning. I'm just not understanding what's going on here.
We sent you a map, right?
Yep.
Okay, so the access is on Stoddard, and that road remains open to traffic. I'm sorry.
Wells.
Okay, I'm looking at this backwards, I'm sorry.
This is my property
Yeah,
right here.
Hoyne is the way that you get in. Where's your property?
Right.
So you own up here as well?
Yeah, and this is Eric's right here.
Right. So you would get then half of the right-of-way deeded to you by quitclaim by the Board of Supervisors. That would then become your property.
Okay.
Is that the only question?
Yes.
Okay, that was the easy one.
Like I said, I didn't understand.
Oh, okay. Yeah, with these, unlike most of our county roads where property owners own to the center line of the road, on these you only own to your lot corner. So that center portion that is roadway, that 60 feet that is there, is dedicated as public property. When we do these, we take half of the road and write a quitclaim deed for each property owner so that that then becomes part of your property for the future. It'll be a separate tax parcel that'll be based on the description in that deed. Does that get it fully? Okay.
Mark, could you clarify, you said this is a public hearing, I don't see that on the agenda. Which one is a public hearing?
Oh, approve permanent closure.
Okay, just the first item, item A.
There's two items. There's one for the permanent closure of that, and then there's one to vacate right-of-way. They're both on the same.
This is a public hearing for both items, or?
No, this is for the first
Okay.
motion. There's two separate motions that'll be required. One will be to vacate Wells Avenue. The second one will be to vacate excess right-of-way along County Road L37.
Right, but the,
So is it a public hearing or not?
Well, typically, we do it as a public hearing. I guess I didn't have that language quite correct.
the,
The board set a public hearing with a legal notice that was published in the paper.
okay. But this is a public hearing for item A right now?
Yeah.
And it's open, okay.
Yeah.
So the board would need to close the public hearing and then approve the motion to vacate the right-of-way of Wells Avenue.
Didn't you move that?
My recommendation.
Well, yeah. Anybody else to be heard on it? All right, then I will move the closure of the public hearing.
Second.
Motion by Raddick, second by DeWitt. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? And then I will move to, oh, sorry, that passes 5-0. Move to approve the permanent closure and vacation of the county roads in the Morningside Second Edition, approve vacation resolution.
Second.
All right, motion by Raddick, second by DeWitt. Any discussion? And all those in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Passes 5-0. Now in a public hearing to approve the vacation and access right-of-way adjacent to County Road L36 and 150th Street and approve vacation resolution.
We presented as part of the backup material a plat showing the excess right-of-way that resulted from a relocation of the road, which is now County Road L37, which is the route that comes north, or I'm sorry, L36, that is the route that comes north into Correctionville. The road was relocated sometime between the 1930 and 1950 aerial photos that are part of the county record. But a good deal of excess right-of-way that is no longer necessary for the maintenance of the road or of utilities in the area is adjacent to a property. The property owner has paid for platting and would like to see that excess right-of-way vacated. I reviewed their request. I actually chose the location where we felt we would still protect the access to utilities and our needs for future road development, and recommend that we vacate this. There is no necessity for a public hearing on this one necessarily. It is just strictly vacation of excess right-of-way that's allowed to be done by the code, as long as said vacation does not interfere with access to the properties. In this case, it does not. So I'm recommending that the board pass that resolution closing and vacating that right-of-way at the corner of County Road L36 and 150th Street.
So anybody to be heard regarding this item?
We did receive a letter that can be put into the record from Gabe and Terry Demarest. Dear Woodbury County Board of Supervisors, we received notification regarding the public hearing to vacate excess right-of-way on our property and request this letter be read into the record for the board's consideration. We apologize for not being able to attend the meeting in person due to a previously scheduled family vacation. We are in support of the road vacation as pictured and described. If anything different is suggested, we request the board postpones their final decision until a future board meeting where they can be present for that conversation.
So they missed the vacation due to a vacation.
Yes. That is to be added to the record.
Okay, just, so there is no public hearing, just you need a motion to receive that letter.
Okay, I'll move to receive the letter.
Second.
Motion by Raddick, second by DeWitt. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes 5-0.
I recommend we vacate the excess right-of-way.
Oh, so are you saying the public hearing was for both at the same time, or what?
There's no public hearing, you're just voting on this motion to
Okay.
vacation.
I will move that.
There's no vacation,
Oh.
or there's no public hearing required
For
for
this one,
vacation of
okay.
excess right-of-way that does not affect access to property.
Gotcha, okay. So motion by DeWitt, second by Raddick, second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Passes 5-0. And we are well, a little bit past our 4:45 set time. Thank you, Mark.
And just for your information, we'll bring back quitclaim deeds for for both properties in a couple of weeks for the board consideration.
So 11A from Building Services, receive Prairie Hills demolition project competitive bids.
Kenny Schmitz, Building Services Director. Prairie Hills facility was closed in 2016, and since that's time, it's been deteriorating quite rapidly. On July 14th, we did a mandatory pre-bid walkthrough with some contractors. Today, we received those bids from the contractors involved. Those were opened at 3 o'clock with the auditor's assistance. Tonight, the agenda item before you is to receive those bids and consider the award of those bids.
I'll move to receive.
And I'd like to read those bids. We got 3 bids for the project. The first was from J. Petticord Incorporated of Bondurant, Iowa. The base bid was $899,000. Bid alternate number 1, which is a deduct, was $10,000. The second bid was from D.W. Zinser Company from Walford, Iowa. The base bid was $267,900. Their bid alternate deduct for number 1 was $0. And the third and final bid was from Hebert Construction Company of Sioux City, Iowa. That base bid was $399,560. The bid alternate number 1 deduct was $0. So low bid would be D.W. Zinser Company, $267,900 with no bid alternate.
We have a motion to receive. Do we have any seconds? We got a motion by DeWitt, second by
Second the motion to receive with the microphone on.
Wright. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Nay. So it passes 4-1. Okay.
I've got John Rise with Impact 7G, who assisted us with identifying all the scope of the project, if you will. If anyone has any questions for John, he'd be willing to answer those. We did review all the bids, and we would jointly recommend that you accept the low bid from D.W. Zinser Company.
The impact was greater than 7G, though. Sorry.
In this case, yes.
So moved. Second?
Motion by Ung, second by DeWitt. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Nay. So passes 4-1.
And then I would also request the board to consider a 5% project contingency fee. Based on the $267,900 low bid, that contingency would be $13,395.
So that's item 11C.
Yes.
Do we have a motion?
I'll move that.
Do we have a second? Motion by DeWitt, second by Ung. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Nay. It passes 4-1.
Thank you.
Yeah, and then you got your 11D here. Approved letter and understanding dated July 11th, 2022 to address 28th Street construction project change order improvements required to meet City of Sioux City's additionally anticipated developments along 28th Street.
This item is for the letter of understanding that was conducted with participation from the county and the City of Sioux City. This letter of understanding is designed around what would be contract change order number 1, since this is a county contract. This encompasses the additional improvements along 28th Street that the city has requested for future developments. The financial impact is $76,955. And the city is asking us to go ahead and sign off on that letter of understanding and change order.
So this is all part of our 2080 agreement as far as the entire jail project goes.
Yes, that agreement was attached, I think, in your backup material. So this ties directly into that 2080 agreement. This letter of understanding followed that agreement and provided the language for us to move forward with the requested improvements that the city wanted to have.
Was that the total number of change orders, or was there the others as well that were the minor, like,
This is change order number 1, which only includes items that the city is requesting for future developmental needs. There will be other change orders coming forward, I believe probably next week, on next week's agenda. And we will have at least 2 additional change orders. Next week coming will be change orders number 2 and number 3, which would be a county expense.
all right, and this was the 76,000.
And this 76,000 is being billed to the city. It's been invoiced to the city, and they have been paying those invoices to date.
And the anticipated change orders, those are going to be the county expense, but they're much smaller, correct?
They're not necessarily much smaller,
Sure.
but they are at the county expense, but they do, the 2080 agreement is drafted that the city will pay up to $2.8 million of that project, and so it will come off the number, or the 2.8 million number for that project. However, I can say that the change orders will bring the county over that number.
I'll move 11D.
Second.
Motion by Raddick, second by DeWitt. Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? All right, it passes 5-0. Thank you, Kenny. Moving on to item 12, Woodbury County Library. Julian, Carroll, discussion of Woodbury County air conditioner at the library.
I'm Julie Heyman. I am the president of the Library Board. We're not an association. This is Donna Chapman, our director. Carol Nelson couldn't be here. She had a last-minute work. She was stuck at work. So I think Carol's our secretary, and she sent you a memo last week. I believe it was forwarded to all of you, so giving you an update. So this has been going on since late May. I'd like Donna just to talk a little bit more about the conditions. I feel really bad I wasn't aware of everything that was going on until our board meeting a few weeks ago. This is not okay for our employees to have to be in these kind of conditions. And just so you know, the library is in the Mobile Community Center. The building is owned by the city of Mobile, and we lease that building. Excuse me. When I talked to Mr. Taylor last week, I did forward a copy of our lease, which he also sent to Mr. Widman in the county attorney's office just to review it. The lease does say that the city of Mobile is 100% responsible for the Hvac system. So I really want Donna to tell you a little bit more about the conditions they've been working in, so.
Yeah, it's been very, very hot. You know, we've got some employees that they're just wiping all the time because they're just sweating and stuff. And the air conditioner that they brought in, works okay, but I'm pointing to Mr. Nelson back here. Anyway, it doesn't really cool the room very much because there's so much heat around the building and stuff that it's probably down to about 80 in that one room. So it's just very hot. We've kept the doors open to try to get breeze to go through. So in the meantime, we get rodents, we get birds. We've gotten millions of flies this week. I've gone through about 4 cans of fly spray, which probably isn't good for us to inhale. And it's just not good conditions. Everything's dusty. They did bring in the 4 dehumidifiers. 3 of them worked, which took out the humidity in the air, which was good because the books were starting to stick together, crumpling. So it's just not good. We've had to send our employees home just because, like about 2 or 1, and when it gets to about 100 or 90 degrees outside, the building's just hot.
When I talked down this morning, the flies are really bad. The windows don't open, so they have to keep the doors open. It was a small air conditioner unit, a window air conditioner unit that Eric and Carroll Nelson brought in. We had vented out the book return slot, and it's just for one little room so they could have a little relief. So last Wednesday night, the Mobile City Council met and did approve to put in a new HVAC system, which was needed. The problem with it is, I believe the system itself, the hardware is okay, it's the computer that controls it that went out. And Donna was told at the end of May when this happened, they were 10, 12 weeks out or longer for a repair. So they did say they would try to get somebody in. They learned somebody can bypass the system. Well, it's been Thursday, Friday, Monday, Tuesday. Nobody has showed up yet, and they're still working those conditions. Donna has kept a calendar, and I can certainly leave this with you, of every day, what time they closed. We have a weather policy, which is usually for snow, but we gave them the okay to leave for those things. So when I had reached out to Mr. Taylor, and I texted Mr. Raddick, I'm sorry, I know you wrote down, Mr. Taylor did talk to Jim Fisher, the mayor, to we reached out, he just kind of give us some more help. So that's where we're at. We had found, actually Carroll Nelson did a lot of legwork. We had found 2 temporary units in Sioux Falls. She contacted somebody from C.W. Suter, and they were, this is a busy time of year for air conditioning. They were wanting, do we want the units? And if the city wasn't going to approve it, I asked Jeremy, could we go ahead and pay it? Would the county pay it? And then we could send it to the city. It was going to be about $15,000 to $16,000 to rent them for 2 months, the installation, and also we had to put in a 220 volt. Jeremy asked Mr. Woodman about it and said, no, it's not probably in our lease. So those are things we tried to do. So, just want to give you an update on that. Have any questions for us?
Is it a certain vendor that's supposed to bring the bypass solution in the last few days? Who are you talking?
I'm not sure. I was not at the council meeting last week, did they say?
I'm assuming it's somebody that works on it, or, because I don't think it's something that the city guys can do. So maybe they're waiting for somebody to have time to come.
So we don't know who the somebody or some company is?
No, I can find out, I'm sorry.
Oh, it's okay. I'm just wondering who we're waiting on, you know.
It's a busy time of year, but we're a business. This has been going on for 2 months for them. So.
Yeah, and these books are funded by partly county dollars.
This is county property.
This is county
We have
property.
Approximately 8,000 titles. That would be quite an expense to have to replace all those. The humidity is not good on books. I also worry about mold. That could not be good for our employees as well. So.
Well, is Mobile talking about reimbursing the county somehow if we do this, or, I mean?
Well, we have discussed about going to them and asking for a refund on part of our lease.
Well, I'm certainly I feel your pain because I like air conditioning too, but if Mobile knew about this and they say it's 100% their responsibility, where's the city of Mobile?
Well, they thought they were helping. I mean, it wasn't until Donna called and said, okay, the books are starting to take on moisture, so they brought down some large humidifier units, but they put out more heat working. I really, one of the city council members, Brett Hayworth, was there a week ago Saturday. They weren't aware of it. He walked in and he thought, this is awful. I wish every city council member would have come down and walked in the building and realized how awful it is. I mean, there were days, it was over 100 degrees in there, probably much warmer than outside even. So we will try to keep on the city council. Mr. Taylor talked to Mr. Fisher. I had called him and said, can you lean on him a little? Because we just didn't seem to be getting anywhere, so. And I think Carroll had talked to you as well, Mr. DeWitt.
Yeah, and I couldn't make it to that meeting. I had an appointment later in the afternoon and I couldn't get there in time, but Mr. Taylor, I heard you speak.
Yes, thank you, Rocky. So I did talk to Jim Fisher, and one of the concerns that I shared, and Matthew alluded to this, is that we have potentially over $150,000 worth of county property in there, and while the lease doesn't seem to specify that the money can be fronted up front, obligating them to reimburse us, my worry is that Mobile could be taking on some liability if those county property, that county property in the form of books are damaged, and so it could be an expense that's nearly 10 times as much. So I appreciate what Julian company are doing, so please just keep us apprised, because if the situation isn't rectified soon, we might have to seek other recourses or do something.
This might be an opportunity to apply for an emergency MERD grant, which I think has a lower cap, but that would cover 15,000. I don't know if they do a temporary fix. They might want to pay for an immediate fix, but.
Yeah, excuse me, do you know how many square feet that,
I think it's like 6,200.
okay.
And then the community centers on the other side. We have summer programming that had to hold outside or cancel some. Those things are booked January, February, or I mean, even sometimes a year in advance. The city of Mobile has had to cancel all their events that were supposed to be on the community center side. One of the things they really should have done when they built that building is had 2 separate HVAC units, one for our side, one for their side. Kind of wish they would, doesn't sound they're going to do that now when they put the new system in.
But with their approval of the new units, we're not really waiting on money, are we? Those take time to be delivered, and we're waiting on another party to try a bypass.
Right. First, they were going to try to bypass it, and hopefully it wouldn't like burn it up before the new unit got.
The only immediate fix you were talking about is renting units at that cost.
We were going to, but now the city found out they can bypass the unit.
And they're not willing to
We're okay with
spend that money to
We just wish
the
they'd
short
show up.
term. Okay.
I have no idea. I was at the meeting, so I don't know what their cost is. I did say to Mr. Fisher when I talked to him, I said, this is an emergency. You should have contingency funding for this. If this was a water main break, you're not going to wait till your next city council meeting to approve repairs. So,
Well, short-term bypass like that shouldn't cost much more than like $300.
yeah, I wish they'd take care of it. I'm just waiting on the person, so. Any other questions?
Well, I'd like to thank Mr. Nelson for stepping up and trying.
Yeah, they did. I got a quick question. Are any of you a liaison to the county library board? I wasn't sure. I just thought in the future, if you just want me to contact one of you and they can forward it on, but,
Let's say it's Taylor, he's not here right now.
okay.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Well, Mr. Taylor, you said you have a reading background as a middle school teacher, so
I'm willing to take it on.
thank you. We appreciate that. The only other thing I just wanted to mention is we are in dire need of a bookmobile driver. So if you know anybody that you can send our way, a retired person, anybody, that'd be great. So, thank you very much, and thank you for your help. Thank you
There's
for your
probably
support.
AC in the bookmobile, isn't there?
There is, they all want to ride with me now.
Thank you.
I moved to Orlando to go to film school, and on the drive down, my AC in the car went out, and within a month of living there, my apartment AC went out, and I had to live the whole time. I got zero back from my landlord, so I don't know that you're going to get much back from your rent. Let's see, item 13, Human Resources. Approve CWA civilian jailer MOU and authorize the chairperson to sign the document. Did your office have a chance to look through that? And
I'm not sure if we fully looked through that document at this point, though.
okay. I know we sent that off to, I believe, Heidman on that one. Did you or Jeremy have anything out of that, Matthew? That
No, I think we were okay with it.
all right. Well, seeing that, I'll go ahead and move that.
Second.
Motion by Raddick, second by Young. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes 5-0. Moving on to item 14 from County Auditor, approve resolution establishing a new rate of pay for Woodbury County Precinct election officials.
Thank you. What you have before you is just a resolution that increases the precinct election official pay right now. The regular POs make $10 an hour, and the chair people make $12 an hour, and we're proposing to raise it to $15 an hour and $17 an hour. And because of the change in the law, reducing, they've cut in half the amount of time that early voting will take place, so we don't have to hire precinct election officials for that long a period of time. And plus, because of there will be a lot less postage spent too for absentee voting. I'm not happy with all that, but it does provide the funds to do it for this year.
I'll go ahead and move this.
Second.
Motion by Raddick, second by Young. Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes 5-0. Item 15A, secondary roads, approve resolution to participate in statewide application for the preparation of safety action plan for Woodbury County roads.
Through the new Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, there's additional money out there for highway safety, both for pedestrian and vehicular users on the highways. The county has received in the past money that's allowed us to replace or add additional signs, upgrade our curve signs, install chevrons in a lot of our roads. One of the new requirements of the new bill is that the county have a safety plan in place. This is an interactive process where we work with law enforcement, emergency responders, and the DOT to look holistically at our road system, see if we've got areas where safety funds can be targeted to make improvements. We have done some work on this in the past. We had a curve down on old 141 that had been the scene of 7 fatalities. And, initially we approached it with better signing, chevrons. Then we did some grading work to open up sight distance around that curve, which, knock wood, we haven't had a fatality since we did that. It really helped daylight that curve when we were able to work with the property owner and lay back the embankment on private property that lay within the middle of it. But work like this to get federal aid participation requires one of these plans to be in place. The 99 counties are working together to create new plans. This would be at no cost to the county. The cost for federal aid would provide 80%. DOT is looking at using some of their safety funds to provide the other 20. So basically it's just time for the engineering staff in working with development of this plan. So I recommend that we participate in the program.
I'd move that.
I'll second the recommendation. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
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 And aye, and anybody opposed? All right, that passes 5-0.
This also requires the auditor's attestment. Thank you.
All right, moving on to item 16. Community and Economic Development, Dan Priestley, information about planning and zoning fees for conditional use permits and other permits or services.
Good afternoon, Supervisors. Dan Priestley, Zoning Coordinator. I just wanted to kind of bring to your attention the fee schedule structure for the county, kind of looking at the public notification requirements that we have to do for administering the department. We've got 500 regulatory feet basically to send out notifications, and we also have 1,000 for other areas, as well as up to 1 mile. And so our conditional use permit fee for like a cell tower mailing out to a mile is $500. And if we look at postage these days, as well as posting in the newspaper, we might find that our conditional use might grow quite a bit in expense. And what I'm getting at is a typical conditional use may just have a few properties within 500 feet. And so most of our applications, we've probably got under 25 landowners or so within an area, even with a minor subdivision up to 1,000 feet, basically. We do run into outlier situations. For example, a couple years back, we had a cell tower go up near Sloan, and then another one out by Cushing. And when you're in those areas, your notice will pick up the density of the town and get quite a bit of names on those applications. We had about 654 letters go out to Sloan at that time and picked up 150 or so around Cushing, when we're just typically used to about 25 or so. And kind of looking at some analysis and ways that we could not have the county be affected so much when we get, let's say, a huge application like a tower, a pipeline, or a landfill, or those type of scenarios when you have to post within 500 feet of expansive property. I'd kind of like to look at the aspect of maybe having a point where there's a level of so many letters that would be covered under the fee, maybe like 30 or 35, and then to a point where the applicant, in a sense, would have to fund the expense of the extra cost associated, whether it be a level with the amount of legal notification in the journal or some other publication as well. So just kind of looking at some cost basis of administering these ordinances.
So in general, how would we, would this take an amendment to the ordinance or surrounding conditional use permits, or would this take 3 public hearings?
The zoning ordinance gives the Board of Supervisors the authority to approve a resolution that sets the fee schedule. The fee schedule actually dates back to 2003. Our most recent ordinance was enacted in 2008, which gave the board the ability to set that. So I would probably suggest looking at the fee schedule, the structure that we have now, and maybe putting some language in there that might have a trigger point where we have so many applications within an area. Most of our business, again, would not hit 35 or so. Even with the minor subdivisions that come here within 1,000 feet, we're probably at a high about 20, 25, or 30, depending on the intensity there. But again, if an application comes in, it's multi-parcel, very significant project, we can grow very quickly outside of our traditional 20 or so up to hundreds, especially when we get into the requirement of the 1 mile noticing. And the outliers, again, are when you go up against a city, next to a city, you're going to incur quite a bit
So
more.
what was our current fee structure? You said around 600?
Our conditional use permit right now is $250 or so. So if we start kind of doing some math and sticking in, if you're doing first-class mail, 60 cents, of course.
And you're also talking the notices to the paper as well, correct?
Yes, the notices to the paper. Typically, those are in the 50 cents or so range a line. I think it's about 58 cents or so, but I'd have to double check on that per the column in there. And of course, just factoring in the smaller costs of the printing, the ink, the letters, or the basic format. But of course, we would take a careful measure to find the cheapest route as possible in terms of noticing in bulk mail rates and looking at alternative options to get the costs down there. But again, looking at the general, probably 90% plus of our business, we're not going to run into an outlier application, but there's times where there are properties that we're going to be noticing quite a bit more under the regulatory. So there's a number of ways to kind of look at including that as possibly an application cost as part of the permit.
So if you were to say the 90%, how many do we notify in 90% of the time? Is it 10? Is it 20?
It just kind of throwing it out anecdotally, it's probably about in 20, around the 20 mark or so. And typically, again, our fee schedule helps us defer costs of the department budget, and so it's not perfect at times. I know with the inflation scenarios going on as of recent, maybe looking at the actual structure of the fees and themselves could be an option. Generally, in zoning, trying to keep permit fees in a reasonable rate is very beneficial, of course, to the property owners, et cetera, with incentives to, of course, reach out to the zoning offices and to get the permits and everything from that perspective as well. So there's a lot of aspects of looking at what those fee tables would look like. And of course, over the last couple of years, before the recent inflation set, we've had numbers up through 2021 on par of where inflation was a year or so ago before the recent upticks. But maybe the fee schedule as a whole could be looked at in addition to those other costs.
Knowing that we're going to have some projects that are going to require some heavy notices here in the future, I think it's good for the board to be on this as far as getting something out there. And I would say even the $250 seems a little bit low considering what we got to pay for every paper. You know, we got to pay for the 3 papers, and then on average it's probably about $5 per mailer you're going to send out. I think we might want to look at raising that to 300, and then once you exceed 30 notices, an additional, $5 or $10 per person you have to notify. I don't know. I think it would make sense.
Yeah, there's definitely a number of options for sure on that.
And I don't, this is, Dan and I had talked about this, and I thought this was suitable for a board discussion, which if anybody else has any input or direction to give his office, I think it would be good.
And yeah, just some brief background on the conditional use process. We get an application and we're kind of set in the month-to-month regulatory scenario where we get letters out. It's quite significant, so the zoning commission can do their thorough review on these projects, and then the public hearing under regulation is the Board of Adjustment decisions when they fall under that conditional use.
Anybody else have anything there on that?
I've chatted with Dan about it briefly the other night too, so yeah, it makes sense. We need to look into it, especially for bigger issues, so thank you.
And then Dan, we obviously just RagBri took off. How can we address them in the future as well with vendor permit process for future events kind of like that? I guess that would be something else.
Yeah, possibly maybe some type of special use type of permit category, which would probably take some amending of the ordinance likely.
So I don't know if you could put, 3-month time frame on looking at a vendor permit process, and then maybe as soon as possible on this fee structure, because somebody could. Oh yeah, well, potentially they don't have that determined yet on RagBri, but on the planning and zoning fees for the conditional use permits, somebody could submit a project right away, and I don't think we want to get caught sending out 1,000 notices. So, all right, thanks, Dan.
Okay, thank you.
Following that up, with Board of Supervisors approved to renew Community and Economic Development parking spot in the Willis parking ramp. Have that on for action. That should be a board discussion as well. Because we need to know, one, do we keep paying for that spot or not? And we have a director vacancy, so it's a good time to possibly bring up any intentions or plans there. And
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead.
It doesn't seem to me like it makes sense to pay for a spot for a position that we don't have. Those are my thoughts.
Mr. Chairperson,
Go ahead.
I think that is in the budget this year. You do have to consider is that you will lose that position, that parking spot, if you do not renew it, just for your consideration.
I concur with Mr. Taylor, but I haven't seen any movement or thought process on what we're going to do going forward with that opening. So to Mr. Gill's point, yes, if we vacate it, it would probably take a long time to get it back if we needed to, but it seems like we're spending money that doesn't need to be spent.
Who could it be repurposed for, if anyone?
Well, one of the other two in the office could use it. It's in their departmental budget.
It's being used now.
So, you know, and I guess it's not on the agenda as discuss whether or not we fill the director position, but that could be a broader part of the discussion, I guess, in the future.
Is it a
Who is
12?
currently using the spot right now?
I believe Don.
Is that a 12-month contract or something, or is that month by month?
It's,
Probably.
Is it
Annual.
What? Annual?
What was, but is it 2,000? Is that what it is?
do you know, Karen?
Oh, well. I think it'd be worth saving at that point.
Well, if it's 700 a year for the time being, maybe hang on to it until we decide what we want to do with the director.
So we actually have 2 spots right now, which we can get rid of one of them. There is an issue too. We have a county vehicle that we could park in that spot. I don't care where I park. I don't have to. I'm just parking there because it's open and it's paid for. But it's only paid for till the end of July. So that's why I kind of thought we needed to decide what we should do with it. So.
You said we have 2 spots?
Yeah, we have 115 and 118, and 118 is right at the edge of, right by the door, and it's hard to park in there, so that one can go, you know. But that comes up the end of August, so, and that's also in our budget for this year, so.
So if there's one to let go, you'd rather
Let go of the
renew this
August.
one and let the other one go
Yeah,
next?
just because that one's hard to get in and out of, so, just an idea.
All right, well, then I'll just move to go ahead and approve the renewal of that spot.
Second.
I'll go motion by Raddick, second by DeWitt. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, passes 5-0. Moving on to item 18 from Board of Supervisors, Rocky DeWitt, approved to move forward to amend wind turbine ordinance, changing setback to 2,500 feet from 1,250.
Mr. Taylor, are you still on?
I am.
I've had, and I'm sure the rest of the board members have had, no fewer than millions of people reach out, phone calls, emails, text messages, and things like that to increase the setback from 1,250 as alluded to by Mr. Hare. From my own experience, I've had absolutely 0 people contact me in favor of keeping the, in fact, in favor of keeping the setback at 1,250 feet, let alone have them in our county at all. So I can speak confidently on that. This is basically my action item to determine with an up or down vote whether we're going to proceed and go forward to get the setback to a minimum of 2,500 feet and amend the ordinance, or if we're going to leave it at 1,250. It's basically, all I'm asking for is a vote to move forward or a vote to put it to bed and accept it as is.
I'm okay bringing it back up and potentially moving the setback out further, but I don't know with this motion if we can specify exactly how many feet the 3 reading process would come up to. If we went to 2,000, we'd be above every other county in the state of Iowa, for instance.
Well, as spoken of before, we also have Les Hills, which obviously we don't want to encroach on that. I've had, in fact, everybody that's come up and asked me or contacted me, again, email, phone calls, text messages, has been 2,500 feet. I think seems to be the happy spot. So that said, I would move to approve to move forward to amend the wind turbine ordinance, changing to setback of 2,500 feet from the 1,250 feet.
Second.
Motion by DeWitt, second by Taylor.
I'd like to make a few comments too, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
I just echo essentially what Rocky said in terms of constituents. I know you all went through the ordinance process. I was not on the board at the time and typically don't like to revisit issues except when the number of constituents come forward that have come forward. Personally, I'd like to see more like a half mile, which would be 2640, but this is acceptable. And I did ask our county engineer to poll some of the other counties, and do know that our 1,250 feet is certainly not the strictest by any stretch. So I think for the quality of life and the other concerns that have been presented, I'm supportive of Supervisor DeWitt's motion.
And not that I'm asking for an immediate vote, but I would like a roll call vote on that, please.
Personally, I'm not going to support that. That does all but eliminate wind in Woodbury County, and I don't think that that is within our job description.
I'm not supportive. Want to address a comment that was made earlier. It was a question. I'm not sure if the gentleman from Lawton's still here, and I don't think he is. The question is, yeah, it's green.
Okay.
It's all.
Can you hear out there?
I effectively used the switch.
Gonna have to speak up again because
Yep.
they can't.
So the question was asked: does anybody to stand to gain from any wind turbines in Woodbury County? No. My family has property near Holstein in Ida County. So I've talked to a couple dozen people, and Rocky mentioned the phone's been ringing off the hook, and there have been a number of people that have been sending emails, and so as a part of that conversation with people, I've just been very open about how my family was personally kind of impacted by this issue, and going back about 2 years ago, so full disclosure, both properties are now in family trust. The property that was near Holstein was my grandfather's property. He's going to turn 90 in October, so he's not managing that anymore. It's in a family trust. Property near Correctionville, the family has some property just to the south of Correctionville. That was my grandpa Wright's property and his dad's property before him. He passed away 10 or 11 years ago, and so that property is also in a family trust. The Correctionville property has been rented to a family connection for the last 20 years. I don't see any, that's what we've done for the last 20 to 25 years. We have no intentions of putting any windmills on that property because it's my grandmother's sister's husband who rents that land and farms that land. So we're not going to do anything with regard to windmills on that property. And again, the one in Holstein, my father was approached 2 years ago, two-ish years ago, by one of the land lease agents. There were a couple of plans that were circulating around Holstein, and in a preliminary plan, there was the potential for ARP family, which is the family trust. There was the potential for ARP family to put a windmill up on my grandfather's old property. In the final plan that was approved in Ida County, that was not even an option. But I've shared with people that my dad had the opportunity to choose. He was given the opportunity to make a choice. And I'm not going to feel comfortable casting a vote that is going to strip that choice away from some people here in the county. So no, I don't stand to gain, but I think it would be a bit hypocritical of me to move much further. I feel like we've already made some decisions that will prevent county landowners from making that decision. I think we started with economic development, had a suggestion of 600 feet on the setback, and the county engineer's recommendation was 1,600, I believe, is where we originally started. And so we found some middle ground there, closer to the county engineer's recommendation. I feel like no matter what our decision is, I think some people stand to lose. I believe in people having the right to do what they want with their property, but I also believe that people have an obligation to treat their neighbors with respect. So that's why I think, for me, my decision's gonna come down somewhere in the middle, because I don't wanna be on either extreme, because I want people to have the opportunity to make a choice what to do with their own property, but I also don't want other people's properties who are impacted by those decisions to not be taken into consideration by a landowner who doesn't maybe even live here in Woodbury County. So for me, I'm coming down somewhere in the middle. I erred before in the direction of the more strict setback, and I'm prepared to move a little bit further, but not all the way to 2,500 feet at this point.
I guess to answer that question too, I own land in other areas, but not anything that would be able to put a windmill on or benefit financially from this.
I don't own any land suitable for a windmill. To the question of what we can decide here today, PJ, isn't the ordinance process a more conclusive process where we can move anything by motion today, but if the ordinance process produced a setback of 2,000 or 3,000, we can't fall back on a board motion to supersede a ordinance.
That's correct. It's going to have to go through that similar process or the same process that you did to establish the ordinance to begin with.
I'm going to read the motion, PJ. I want you to, any opinion they have on it. So the motion is to move forward to amend the wind turbine ordinance, changing setback to 2,500 feet, setback to 2,500 feet from 1,250 feet.
I think that the motion can be modified, so to speak, to say we are going to look at establishing a change of that ordinance.
Reconsider?
Right, versus actually changing it. I don't believe you can change it here tonight, but you can start the process to look at changing that ordinance. The other considerations that you're going to have to weigh as you go down this process is mainly monetarily. And all I'm going to say about it is, if you have the majority of folks that are wanting you to modify or change this, it's probably something you should look at doing. If the majority of those property owners aren't looking at doing this, then it's probably not. But it's ultimately going to come down most likely to a monetary decision on the part of the county anyway.
So PJ, what would the process be in terms of the board following through on the ordinance change? I mean, if it's tonight, something that we can set in motion the process of doing rather than just considering, what action would the board need to take?
Just what Rocky basically proposed with the amended language that Pat suggested, and then it will just need to go back on the agenda again as with that ordinance process. I believe the 3 public hearings and everything that's included within that process.
Okay.
So the notifications, how long is it, 2 months? 2 weeks? I can't remember.
I'm not sure the exact number.
My suggestion would be, I'd look at this as an instruction to staff on where we go and what we look at in preparing that ordinance update, working with the county attorney's office, planning and zoning, and my office, if you would choose to do it that way.
Can you get closer to the mic? There's folks in the back can't hear.
Okay. My suggestion is we would take this resolution as instructions to staff as far as preparing updates to the ordinance for the board's consideration and going through the 3 hearing process that's required to amend the ordinance. I guess that's why I looked at it. We didn't have a chance to discuss this ahead of time, so.
And just for the record, while Mark is up there, Mark, your original recommendation was 2,500 feet, was it not?
No, my original recommendation was 1,600 feet when I drafted the ordinance.
Okay.
And it was then in the process where we prepared it for board consideration that it was reduced, and I believe it was 600 that it was read at the first hearing.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, maybe before there's any public comment, I could ask a question. With this ordinance being in effect for about a year, I'm just wondering what prompted, the recent, was it people getting contacted by Mid-American subsidiaries? Was that what really kind of spurred everyone to look and say, hey, what do we have going on here? What's on the books?
That does bring a point, because a year ago, that was the compromised distance to go out that far. And at the time, with the information we had, 1250 was the farthest distance. Kossuth and Winnebago are both at 1600, but there's also outliers like Potawatomi is just tower height, which could be like 500 or 300 feet, and Boone County is 750. So.
Mark Nelson, Correctionville. So to answer Matt Ung's question, I was actually at the meeting roughly a year ago when we approved that ordinance, and if you folks would remember, there was several people that stood up. Part of that was that Lust Hill Alliance language that was in that, but there were also several people that at the time said that 1250 was too short. There was nobody that spoke in favor of that setback of 1250. So fast forward to your question, that's exactly what's happened. So Mid-America's calling, they're handing out maps and they're showing where they could be put up, and people are like, holy crap, a quarter mile from my house, I have a driveway that's not even that long. And so that's where, unfortunately, and I understand going back through all this again, but that's where a lot of the concerns have been raised. And that's why this has come up. I sent some of you the Sac County language last night, which was 1,700 feet, 3.5 times the tower. My concern is simply, I'm not trying to stop anybody from building a turbine. I'm not trying to stop for Woodbury County. My concern is that we know for a fact that at 1,250 feet, people in their homes will constantly hear these things. And I just don't think that that's acceptable. If there's data that 1,600, 1,700, like Sac County, other counties, 2,000, that's what it takes to keep noise out of the home, that's what I'm in favor in. I'm not in favor of eliminating them. I just think that we just cannot allow these things to be built to where people are having to put sound deadening things in their home so that they can sleep at night. That's my concern. We have property that they can be built on, and we've met with Mid-America. We're open to it, but my concern is, again, I just don't think anybody in this county deserves to have that kind of noise in their home when they're trying to raise their kids, get ready for work or school, and have a good night's sleep. I just don't think that's too much to ask. So I appreciate your comment, and if there is a compromise here, I think people are open to that. Just, at this point, a lot of people out in the country, we just don't want to hear these things in our home every night, so.
Once again, and just want to, could we make clear what the motion is at this point? Because the way it is written now, it kind of limits what you can talk about when you reconsider that amendment.
Would you like the motion to be amended to approve to move forward to amend the wind turbine ordinance, changing the setback?
I wouldn't even talk about the setback. I would just say to reconsider the ordinance so that you're not limited and someone doesn't come back later and sues you.
Before Dan starts with that one. The board may also want to talk about setbacks from property lines as well. Not just from a residence, but also where we're at from property lines. Because that is the tightest restriction we have, or the smallest restriction we have right now, which I think is 110% of tower height.
Which is what, 600 feet?
600 feet or 110% of tower height, whichever is greater. So
I think that's the point, is that setback in a motion doesn't capture what an ordinance would from property line, from dwelling. Those are things that we need to work out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's really more than once than just that 2,500 foot setback from the residence.
Does window height need to be put in the ordinance?
That's pretty much the technology in place at the time. The tower heights have grown a couple hundred feet. There's some places they're 500-600 feet tall now. So that
that varies, and it's increasing with the changes in technology. Again, the separation was designed to keep, and based on tower height, I believe in part to assure that ice or anything that is thrown from the tower has sufficient setback where it doesn't damage adjacent property.
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead.
Guess I'm confused on how the board is giving direction, if it's just making a motion to reconsider. If the majority of the board wants a setback and the ordinance to be drafted with 2,500 feet, it would seem to me like that's the motion that would need to be made. Otherwise, I'm not sure what we're essentially voting on, unless it's to bring back a draft ordinance with that setback in it.
I'd like to comment on that before you guys officially make anything, if you don't mind. Daniel Hare, 2889 Humboldt Avenue, Hvac, Iowa. As far as the setbacks, I mean, you guys have our population density maps. You can see what the county looks like. We're not like Sac County, Page County, Kossuth County. We are a very densely populated rural county. And so to that, I think this 2,500-foot setback, you know, that's minimum what it should be. I don't think it should be any shorter than that because of how densely populated we are. You guys are affecting thousands of residents in this county. The counties that have these giant wind farms are much less densely populated. They don't have the rural population that we have. And so I would ask that we stick to that 2,500 feet because the U.S. National Wind Coordinating Committee, they recommend that a turbine be put no closer than a half mile, which is 2,640 feet from a residence. There's a time and a place for wind. If it won't fit in Woodbury County with a 2,500-foot setback, it's just not meant to be here. So please take that into consideration. Please protect our property rights, our farming rights, and our health rights. We want to raise our families safe here in Woodbury County. Please take that into consideration.
Do you guys want to change your motion or rescind that motion and make a different one? Or not?
I'm not sure what we would change it to. Simply reconsidering doesn't really give any board intent. And if the majority of the board's intent is to 2,500 feet, it would seem that that motion would be appropriate.
I'll just, here's what I have right now, is to reconsider the wind turbine ordinance, changing setback to 2,500 feet from 1,250 feet.
Well, my comment with PJ was simply that the ordinance process is a stronger move than a board motion. So if the board decided, we looked at this map and we came up, you know, more people came up and said, for instance, 3,000 feet is the minimum it should be, then we can't come back and say, well, we can't do that because 4 weeks ago we said 2,500. I mean, that's why we went through an ordinance process that changed the setback, I believe, every single reading until we reached a final decision. So it's not saying we're not supportive of increasing the setback or targeting something like 2,500 feet. It's just saying we have a 3-meeting process to go through to look at everything all over again. And if we say 2,500, again, is that from property line, from house? What are people inferring from that motion if we say that today? And can we even, you know, we can't just repeal an ordinance with a motion. So we have to go through that process.
To start the ordinance process all over again. And I was told by the county attorney's office that we could amend an ordinance at any time by going through the process, of course. But unless we start that tonight, then I'm not sure how we actually move the ball downfield. And I wouldn't suggest that a motion would supersede the ordinance, but this would be to set that motion into place for the ordinance process to be followed at that setback.
That's fine. I'm just saying the ordinance process has to be followed regardless of what the motion is.
Yeah. If I might, Jeremy, I believe what Chairman Ung is suggesting is that You don't set in stone the 2,500 feet. You might ultimately do that at 2,500 feet, but if you set it in stone tonight and you go through this process and it needs to be altered or changed, you won't be able to do that at that point in time. You'll have to start all over again.
Everybody's point. Good paraphrase? Right. Was good?
Yeah.
All right. So do you guys want to reconsider the motion?
Would it satisfy everybody if I said approve to move forward to amend the wind, to amend the wind turbine ordinance, increasing the setback distance from 1,250 feet? Does that make Mr. Gill happy? Does that make Mr. Jennings happy?
I was just pointing out that
I'm not doing the voting.
if you want to, I think you're restricting yourself to.
Okay, then, so did the suggested motion, would that satisfy what you're after
Would
here?
you say it again? Restate it, please.
Approve to move forward to amend the wind turbine ordinance, increasing the setback above 1,250 feet.
Okay.
He suggested reconsider the wind turbine ordinance, right? That's what your suggestion was. That allows you to reconsider other such setbacks that are in the ordinance as well.
And could we add to direct staff to consider a draft ordinance of 2,500?
Well,
Because I don't know what staff is coming back with if it's just to increase them.
Well, then I wouldn't support it.
And that's fine, but I wonder if we have more specificity than just increasing that.
Well, there is no specifics of increasing if you just reconsider the ordinance.
What is specific is what's on the books right now.
Right.
We've got a room full of people here that want to see something increase, so I'm trying to get something moving forward without getting tangled up in the fishnets here, and I'm just trying to get something moving forward, or get it up and going, or vote it down and kill it.
I think that's what the suggestions are trying to do.
So the suggestion is to move to reconsider the wind turbine ordinance.
To revisit.
So I guess I'll go ahead and make that motion.
The
We still
Mr.
have,
DeWitt's motion is on the floor.
Okay.
If he wishes to remove it and reconsider.
do you guys want to change your motion or not?
I do not.
Okay. Well then,
I don't either, because I don't know that voting to reconsider something makes any real difference, practically speaking, for the constituents, and that it has any practical effect of doing anything.
all right, anybody, come on up, sir.
I think part of the issue here, Matthew brought up a really good point, and I agree with Justin very much. We don't want to take property rights away from people. The real issue here is that Mid-American will not tell us which windmill generators they will put up. The windmill generators are not all equal. If you go over by Ida Grove, there are some that make a horrendous noise, and they follow a valley and make it almost unlivable for a long ways. You can go over by Pocahontas, and they have no setback to speak of, but some of those windmills there don't make any noise at all. So we are really being hampered by the fact that Mid-American will not be upfront and honest with the people to say, this is what we're going to build. They want everybody to agree to this, and in their actual document it says that they have the right to choose, after you agree to do this, what type of generator they're going to put up there. So if a Mid-American won't meet you and say what they're going to do, I think in order to protect the citizens of this county, you have to consider then the setback's got to be more rather than less, because, yeah, in some instances, probably 600 feet is no big deal. But if you take those really noisy generators, 2,500 isn't enough. I mean, that's the real issue, the way I see it. We aren't playing with somebody who's being upfront and honest with us.
And I had another gentleman contact me, I think it was yesterday, and he says, what if we got the setback at X and somebody finds a really nice, or someone wants to subdivide a piece of property off, and now they can't do it because the turbine's already there. So, like, well, I'm just trying to get one thing solved at a time. I don't know how to move forward with that, but, without.
You know, Dan, is that a question that you can address there as far as zoning goes? If you have well, we'll let him speak, but then can you think of, go ahead.
Eric Nelson, Mobile. Not trying to supersede the county attorney, but what I've just been reading through procedure is that it would be an amendment to the ordinance, and there would need to be a hearing for that. And it's not like it's probably the biggest thing that will have ever been done. We have a tremendous advantage in Woodbury County, having had as many wind farms already built around the state. A lot of the ones in first didn't know a lot of these things, like the gentleman that just spoke before me. I have a friend up in Cherokee County that he has to run a noise machine at night if the wind is in the wrong direction, and they have a 1,250 foot setback from the edge of his acreage where his house is, and so it's somewhat over 1,250 feet. So to say that, well, it's just what the rest of the state has done is not, in my opinion, that's not good enough, because we have a lot of other examples that have been set and things to learn from. And also, I would challenge you to not assume that the original proposal made by, was it the economic development folks, that was at all proper, especially when you had the county engineer was at 1,600 feet at the same time. And I would simply go back and examine that pretty closely, because something was, you're only 1,000 feet off within the same county government. And so I think that in itself begs the question that it's not always easy to hit these things right the first time. So let's just make sure we get it right before it's too late.
I think, Eric, to paraphrase what you're saying, we didn't know what we didn't know. And probably some of these other counties didn't either.
Exactly.
I feel that way a lot.
Anyone else to be heard?
Did you call Dan up?
Oh, yeah, Dan, sorry, yeah. Thank you for remembering.
Kind of rephrases this about if it exists.
Yeah, so if somebody had a parcel they wanted to subdivide, but now there was a windmill there, can they still do that?
Well, technically, to kind of use the hog confinements as kind of an example, when we go through the master matrix process, they have to cite and know the particular distance to install it there. But then if somebody so chose to come and get a building permit and want to build closer to the confinement, they can do that. Folks that operate those can build, basically. So this could be possibly that same scenario there, where the park gets sited into the particular locations, and if somebody so chooses and wants to get a permit to build closer, that's an after-the-fact type of scenario there. But the law of unintended consequences are, when you do that and then you sell the property to somebody else, then the landowner could probably experience those scenarios later on. But the upfront zoning aspect of it is they have to meet those setbacks from the houses, but then in retrospect, then you have other consequences.
Sounds great.
Okay, I'm going to make one more run at this. I'm just telling you that the original motion is to approve, to move forward, to amend the wind turbine ordinance, changing setback to 2,500 feet from 1,250 feet. So that is the motion that is on the floor. I was asking if there was going to be a friendly amendment where everybody could agree. That is not the case here, so the amendment on the floor is the one that I just read.
The motion on the floor.
I mean, the motion, yep.
My name is Elizabeth Widman, and I'm a farm owner, and my sons are fifth-generation farmers in Woodbury County. And I know property rights are very important, but I also know that one of the reasons our family is here is because this is a rural, beautiful county. And when you put up those windmills, it changes the whole perspective of the county, the properties around it. I read an article from Forbes magazine last night about Madison County, and they kept the windmills out of their county because the beauty of the county, they have the covered bridges there, and they didn't want to change it. So I just think it's nearsighted to say someone has a property, they can do anything they want to with it, because these are very tall. They affect, it concerns me about it kills the birds. On our property, we have bald eagles that come. We have migratory birds that follow the Missouri River down. I haven't heard any discussion about, concern about that. And I just feel like 1250 is not far enough away from people's properties, people's homes, that the 2,500 would be much better. And my understanding is on the other side of the state where they have the Mississippi River, they took into consideration the migratory birds there. And so I'd just like to go on record that part of your job is to protect those of us that live in this county because we think it's a beautiful place to be. And we don't need just as many windmills as you can put up. You know, there is a place for restrictions on these, you know, the noise, and a lot of other things. So I just want to say that.
Eric Nelson, Moville. Just a quick point of order. So, you know, there's a motion and a second. If you vote for it, it doesn't mean that whoever votes for it today at a hearing that you can't, you know, it's basically to get this moved forward, and then the discussion point becomes, you know, whether 2,500 feet ends up being what is agreed upon, you know, and it's possible maybe there'll be a bunch of folks like us that'll propose 4,000 feet the day of the hearing. You know, and so, but I don't think it's fair to negotiate down what already, you know, either you vote up or down on the motion today, is how I would see it. But to do otherwise is to you know, as the motion's withdrawn, to try to visualize exactly today somehow almost supersedes the will of what the hearing would do when everybody would have a chance to come in and have their say. So I encourage you to vote to support to move this.
That concern is exactly what I think some of us have been saying, that we can signal 2,500 feet, but if Mr. Taylor was to bring up his half mile, 2640, or the gentleman that spoke and said 2,500 isn't enough, if that was to go higher, there's nothing to prevent the board from changing that number. It's an ordinance process. So just so everyone understands, it's not arguing against that number in itself. It's just saying the ordinance process is superior. And if there's a higher setback proposed, we're going to look at that. We can't say, well, we can't talk about it.
Well, the other thing we could do is actually put an ordinance that would make Mid-American tell us what kind of generator they're actually going to use before they do it.
One of my concerns is people have brought up these companies can make promises and sign agreements, but when they expire for whatever reason, there's still some cleanup that's involved below ground that we know all about that as a county, how dealing with stuff beneath large structures that present a problem. So that's something where whatever the county has as a regulation, you can't force a business to stay in operation. And unfortunately, that's the reality that sometimes hits us with these wind farms.
Mark Nelson, to your point, I talked with someone that was formerly in the Iowa Attorney General's office, that, and I say formerly because they just left to work for the FTC, and he was working in the antitrust division, and we were talking about that this issue had come up in my county, and he said that they would have complaints from landowners come in, and initially when these wind farms started, some of these complaints came across their desk of things that these companies were doing to these people, and they laughed them off as like this isn't happening. There's nobody doing this kind of stuff out there. And then they started investigating it, and he said it's unbelievable the contract breaches and things that happen to landowners. They'll transfer them to shell corporations. Cleanup is a big issue. They'll not fund the cleanup accounts that are supposed to be in the contracts. So he said that don't hold your breath at what they say. And this is from a guy that's been in the Attorney General's office for almost a decade. So I wanted to say that because you brought that up. Secondly, I didn't say this earlier when I came up to answer your other question. Per capita, there are more acreages in Woodbury County than any other county in the state. And that shows when we have one of the highest enrollments of 4-H of any county in the state. We have FFA at almost at every school district in the county, which a lot of counties do not have. And we also have one of the larger county fairs in the state. And all of that is and there's a reason for that. It's because of those acreage owners. And so we're lucky to have that because it's great economic activity to have those 4-H FFA programs, the county fair, all the farm and business that generates. So that's why I'm just, wanting to protect those people who maybe 10 acres is their big slice of heaven. But I think that it's just as important as somebody that's got 1,000. So, thank you.
Just so the board is aware, Section 7 of our ordinance requires that there be a cost estimate made for decommissioning of these and that financial security be in place so that if something happens where the company tries to abandon these, that there is a bond that will pay for that. It requires a 5-year re-examination of the security that's been presented for the wind farm, so that if there's inflationary costs that come along and that original bond will no longer fund that decommissioning, that that money would then be adjusted by our ordinance. This is one of the reasons I argued strenuously to get one in place, so that we had the protections for the roads and for the long-term use of the properties in the county. And that is one of the things that we were talking about, how some counties don't have these in place. We're taking advantage of the lessons that have been learned throughout the Midwest and in Iowa by other counties. So.
Mark, out of curiosity, we didn't include in that, though, say, replacement of parts, say like a blade, if a blade were to be replaced, just decommissioning only, is that correct?
This is decommissioning where the tower would no longer be in use.
Correct.
This does not address work that the wind farm operator might do to increase the size of the generator unit, increase the length of the vanes, or replace the vanes at some point during the performance of that. It does not address anything that would be done with that. We assume they own the property, that their contract with the property owner would allow them to come in and do whatever maintenance they need to do to keep those units operating. What we address is that there's a financial security out there, so they can't just leave these things laying like dandelions in your yard and walk away from it.
leaving the landowner or the county holding the bag on it.
I think we should have our vote on the way it is moved. As a roll call.
Okay. DeWitt?
Aye.
Taylor?
Aye.
Ung?
Aye.
Wright?
No.
Raddick?
No. All right, so that passes 3-2. Moving on, item 19 from Board of Supervisors, Jeremy Taylor. A, update on Rolling Hills Governance Board.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I included this in your agenda packet because I am on a military training. Wasn't able to be there tonight, but just wanted to give you a couple of highlights. We held the evaluation of Dawn Menser, our CEO. She's doing a great job through a lot of changes in Iowa code and the addition of other counties. Also, our Crisis and Stabilization Center personnel discussed the new 988 number, which is used for crises related to suicide, and they have seen the fruit of that initiative. And then finally, the IRSH house, it's an intensive residential support house in Sioux City, is the last of the 8 core services. It's a 4-bedroom home set up for 4 clients. 7 of the staff are hired with 4 more left to fill, and they're identifying those clients with complex needs. Working with the MCOs, we'll have pre-authorization for 3 months, 6 months, even up to a year, with the first client being taken in August. So I know this is normally a committee update, but just wanted to put this in and update the board.
All right, so 19B, discussion and action on 2022 Siouxland Chamber Annual Meeting. I guess I should probably ask, did anyone have any questions on the Rolling Hills update? All right, so go ahead with 19B.
So this item is just to present the board with an opportunity to discuss and take action on whether we'll obtain chamber member tables for the Siouxland Chamber of Commerce annual meeting. I know in the past we've had 1 or 2 tables. Each table consists of 10 seats, and I believe in the past we had invited any of the 9 elected officials. Should they bring a spouse, the spouse typically pays the cost of the ticket. We've also opened this up to department heads, and I think it's been a good representation of our county and way to bring us together in some ways for that. So just wanted to see if there's the desire through local option sales tax. I believe this is budgeted through county community and economic development, and ask what the will of the board is.
Well, I would only need 1 spot for myself, speaking for myself, so.
I think we should get a table.
Well, yeah, we normally get 1, but do we get 1 or 2, I guess, is what we're tallying up. Are we going to have 20 people, or are we going to have 10?
I won't be able to attend.
I won't go. I'm a lame duck. Nobody cares what I think.
Pat or PJ, you guys planning to go?
Not sure at this point.
Rocky?
Yeah, I'd go.
1 or 2?
1 table or 2 tables?
No, one person or 2 persons?
Just me.
Jeremy, you're going?
Yes, my
Spouse.
plan to.
Spouse 2? Okay, so we got 4 people going.
One suggestion I might have, Mr. Chair, is to potentially ask other elected officials that aren't there and department heads, and tonight's motion could authorize up to 2. But then if that's not filled, then we just go with 1. Maybe an idea to be able to ask those who aren't in the room.
Sounds great. Who's sending that email?
I think Karen volunteered.
I see her, looked like she was nodding to me, so.
Okay.
Last
right,
year,
so-
did we have a table funded by another county entity? Was it
Well, typically
Veterans Affairs or
conservation. Conservation usually gets one, right?
And I think Veterans Commission
Yeah,
does
Veterans
too, I
Affairs
think.
definitely did, because that was with the speaker with the disability that was a veteran.
Well, I think if we got 2 and all the other entities that get theirs, we'd have some spillover or vice versa.
Well, if we only got 4 going, it doesn't make sense to buy two tables. So let's get that census, and I appreciate the suggestion on the motion, Jeremy, so I will move approval up to 2.
I'll second.
I'll do motion by Raddick, second by Taylor. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone
Aye.
opposed? Passes 5-0. Item 20, report on committee meetings. Okay, either you guys? On the phone, any committees other than,
Mr. Chairman, I wanted to let everybody know I sent an email with a do not reply all, just a conduit of a pass-through of information from the mayor regarding the conference board and the city assessor updates from that office, just in terms of how things are going. And so passed that to all of you for informational purposes.
and I had no committee meetings because I was not in town last week. Item 21, citizen concern round 2.
Just, Chairman, I will just update the board on the opioid settlement. We, the county, should be receiving that first round of payments within that settlement coming up actually fairly soon. I reached out to Mr. Butler as well as Michelle to try to get that set up, but I just wanted to inform the board that we will start getting those monies relatively quickly. And we'll further inform the board as to how we believe we should proceed with taking care of how we're going to spend that money.
There were rules and restrictions on that, correct? I mean.
Yes.
Yeah,
We have set up a separate fund so it can all be tracked by itself.
right. All right, anyone else, citizen concern, round 2? 22, board concerns. On the phone,
None?
Rocky?
No, sir.
Matthew? Justin? All right, so we got a question asking if it's okay to use the courthouse for the Memorial March, which I think that's fine as long as it's, you know, quiet in the atrium as far as the, not impeding the court procedures. And then Dan, I already brought it up about the vendor permit for Ragbri. Other than that, we probably should continue to look forward to figure out a solution or what we're going to do on the economic development position, whether or not we fill that or put more emphasis on the zoning side in a director position. For just information for the board, we had a discussion on the interchange project following the IJR, potential for $25 million construction estimate, and working with IDOT on design right-of-way acquisition and construction supervision could be up to $5 million of that. They have a DOT Commission tour on August 8th and a meeting on August 9th. Would anyone be able to go to either the August 8th or 9th? I think I'll be going to one if anybody else.
It's not open to the public, but the 9th is.
Okay. That is a Tuesday, so. But do you know what time that meeting was?
It starts at 8 in the morning, and I'll have a location for you within the week. I'm unable.
Okay. I don't like being ready by 8 a.m., but I sure can, so. All right.
Mr. Chairman, if I may?
Go ahead.
Just one last thing. I will need to be calling in next week as well. Just this military obligation goes through then. And then also wanted to highlight Lance Heyman and the operation out there that was highlighted in the Des Moines Register and statewide as far as raising funds for, I believe it was St. Paul's Lutheran, and the amount of people that came through, just really laudable, and thought that that was a great thing that the Heyman family did.
All right. Well, seeing no other concerns, we're adjourned.